everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Spilling the Tea on GovCon. I'm Teresa Moon, Director of Business Development for Parabolis. We provide a better financial partnership for government contractors that includes a line of credit to fund your growth. The purpose of this podcast is to assist small businesses with success in the federal marketplace by introducing them to industry experts and resources that they may not otherwise know about. Today, my guest is Irene Glaeser. She is CEO of Spahr Solutions Group and is also a member of the board of directors for the NVSBC, the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, which is an advocacy group very near and dear to my heart. Irene and I were introduced to each other by my friend Anna Ehrman from the Department of Veterans Affairs at their latest conference here in my hometown of Orlando. It became very clear very quickly that Irene has a unique and inspiring story. So I immediately reached out to see how quickly we could schedule this chat so all of you can benefit as well from her experiences. I think you will also see very quickly why I have been so inspired by her. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you so much, Teresa. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here today, and I'm so grateful for the invitation. And before we get started, I do have to give a quick shout out to Anna Ehrman, who is on a constant quest to provide information and learning and a cup of coffee to anyone in this veteran-owned business space.
I couldn't agree with you more. She's a great friend to this program and to me personally, and I'm always inspired by her as well with her ability to navigate the world of GovCon in such a gracious and thoughtful way. And one of those ways is by making great introductions. And that's how you and I met. And so I'm extremely grateful to her. And, you know, before we get going, I want our audience to get a glimpse at a little bit about you personally. So for those who don't know you already, could you give them a brief description of your military, government, and contracting experience?
Well, I think that question kind of belies the word brief, but I will do my best. I am currently the CEO of Spahr Solutions Group. We are a veteran-owned small business that provides IT solutions to federal and DoD customers in terms of right now agile software development, data analytics, and systems engineering. It is our base. We have a lot of plans to grow, particularly in 2024. And so I'm very excited to be here. This is actually my third or fourth reincarnation of myself, but I sort of think that when we're veterans, there's an underlying thread of all things being related to who we are today. I retired from the federal government in a fairly senior position just a year ago, and that was with the U.S. Ability One Commission, a federal agency that oversees the largest employment program for people who are blind or have significant disabilities, providing goods and services to the federal government. So this program really brought together other things I've done in my life as I've learned the tremendous value that people with disabilities bring to the workplace. Prior to this, I did things that sounded extremely unrelated. My federal position before that was in the Inspector General Office for Department of Defense, Office of Inspector General Administrative Investigations, kind of a career investigator at heart. And I found myself overseeing the quality assurance of very high level investigations into wrongdoing by senior officials and whistleblower reprisal. So I did that upon transitioning from the military. And a lot of people say when you transition, hey, do something you really know. So I had done the same thing at Department of the Army IG prior to retiring. I've been a military police officer since commissioning. Wow. That took me all over the globe, as my upcoming book discusses. It sounds like I was some kind of a badass, but the truth was every position I had, I sort of leveraged it to see how can I help people. I tended to be always in a position where people were either in trouble or going through a difficult time, whether they were on the receiving end or the providing end of an allegation. And in general, especially in the Army, inspectors general have this assistance function where they help people with problems that can't seem to be resolved locally or in their chain of command. It was a great background. I love laws, rules, regulations, policies. And as I said, when we were just chatting, I think it all started with my school bus patrol role in elementary school. I loved my little orange belt and silver badge. But how we normally define ourselves is by our upbringing. And it's so formative, not only our upbringing, but who our ancestors were. So this is where I think it gets interesting. None of the rest of it was, but I think it gets interesting that I was a daughter of two naturalized citizen immigrants and born overseas myself and brought here at the age of 5. English was my second language. And being an immigrant was actually a complete outsider position in my grade school. There were very few of us. And what happened was I had to learn to sort of stick up for myself because I was singled out. And I actually was different. For example, on Christmas, we celebrated it the night before, like they do in many European countries. So I ruined Santa for a lot of my friends, and their parents didn't want me hanging out with them. But interestingly, we had a wave of Vietnamese refugees after that conflict when I was a kid, and I went way out of my way to befriend international students, whether they were refugees or had just come over looking for opportunity, and many of them couldn't speak English. I think that sort of set the foundation for me wanting to help others who sometimes don't get to have everything the others have. And then the last thing I'll say about growing up the way I did was my parents escaped wars, and different wars, different countries. And so they weren't into pampering their children at all. And I kind of learned discipline. My father had a unique way of disciplining me. He had a little fine system. So I had to cough up money if I got in trouble. But the flip side of that was I got to earn money instead of getting an allowance. It was like, hey, you don't have to work, but if you work, you're going to get some money, and then you can do what you want with it as long as you don't get in trouble, which unfortunately I did a lot of. But all of that taught me responsibility, and for great backdrops for military service. At age 14, I reached out to a recruiter, and I still have the letter saying, we're so happy that you want to be a soldier. You're going to be a great soldier. Come back in 3 or 4 years.
Wow. I mean, you've got such a storied past. And I think, so many people are going to gravitate to you because of that. And we're going to dive into some of what inspired you to write your book when we get into the discussion a little bit deeper. But, to your point of how you were raised really informs how we adapt and overcome some things that challenges, especially that we face in our lives. And I think that that's super important. So the fact that you were raised by parents who overcame a lot of challenges, one of which bringing you to this country so that they could provide for you opportunities that they may not have been able to do so, from the countries of origin. And so I think that's extremely interesting. And it informs a lot of us about why there's that grit and pursuit of your goals that I definitely can feel in the way that you talk about the journey that you've had. But it definitely sets you apart because you have such a focus on doing right by others. And that shines through for sure in everything that you do. Just by your presence, I felt it very, very, very quickly. And maybe it's me being an empath the way that I am, but it shines through in the way that you speak and the way that you treat people. And I think that's super important. But I think it's probably also helped with your success, especially in the federal marketplace. We talk a lot on this program about how the people that we know can affect the trajectory of your business. Government contracting is a huge industry, but it's also a very small world. We all know one another and to some capacity based off of, building relationships within different organizations, or from our backgrounds, possibly like yours in the military, which is a huge camaraderie builder as far as being able to take what you've built in a relationship in the military and have that transcend into a business relationship once you make that jump into civilian life. And so, based off of your experience with that and your interaction with the people that you've met along the way, can you chat a little bit about how important your network has been in growing your business?
I think that it cannot be overstated. I don't think that your business could grow at all without a network. It just takes not a village, but a massive community to make this happen. And what I love about GovCon is I almost wish that I'd started 10 years ago, because we are all cut out of the same cloth. We either are veterans, or we support veterans and spouses, or we support small business. And when you are a small business, you may be dealing or teaming with very large businesses. They wouldn't bring you on board if they didn't have an interest in small business and supplier diversity. Now, maybe, and I've heard the naysayers, maybe, that isn't an altruistic goal, but a mandatory goal for some larger businesses. It's not been my experience. My experience so far in this brief time I've been doing it is folks that are genuine, that want to get to know me before they put me on a team. I've had a lot of luck and fortune, but also hard work and reputation in being added to a number of teams in the short time I've been here. And I owe that all to the networks I've built through the various conferences, advocacy organizations, and primarily the NVSBC, which is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great segue to the next level of chat that I'd like to have, and talking about giving back and being a part, giving your time and your talent to organizations that support missions that you can stand behind with pride. And the NVSBC is one of them for both of us. And so I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your position on the board with the NVSBC and what that's meant to, furthering not only the advocacy for veteran business owners, but your ability to navigate the industry as a veteran business owner yourself.
So I'm going to go back just a minute again. One of the things I found that I really enjoyed doing was helping young soldiers and transitioning officers with resume writing. I had to help myself so many times with all these reincarnations, civil service and whatnot, that I wanted to give that skill set back. And that's kind of where it started. I thought, I'm getting a lot of satisfaction out of helping these folks find jobs. And so once I transitioned, I kind of was approached by the NVSBC at another event that was held by IMVF. As I got to know them and they saw something in me, I was encouraged to apply. And I'm so blessed what I'm putting in my heart, which is spreading the word about a organization that strictly exists to advocate for, train, assist with networking for the 47,000 veteran-owned small businesses that are out there in government contracting. And as such, they're the largest body and kind of a unique body that focuses solely on that. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations that support veterans, but we have this unique mission. So in any way I can, I support them and support companies that are interested in joining that network and advocate for why it's so critical to our success.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I make a living out of feeling good about where I'm spending my time. And it isn't so much that the money that you make in doing what you do, but the feeling that you receive from it, and being able to give back to organizations that support veteran business owners and really making a stake and being given the same opportunities as other, businesses that have gone after certifications, having that allocation from each of the agencies to really make sure that veteran business owners are being included in the opportunities and an equal share, I think is so important. And that's why I love the NVSBC. And I'm also a big supporter and member of FAVOB down here in Florida, the Florida Association of Veteran-Owned Businesses. We pride ourselves down here in Florida in being the paramount place for business owners that have transitioned from military service to civilian life to find a home here and really know that the government and, top down is going to support them being able to make their way and make a living so that they can further support and secure their ability to take care of their families. I think that we owe it to you who have given service to this country to make sure that post-service that you're given the opportunities that you put on hold while you serve the country. I think that's extremely important and valuable. And so I'm proud to support groups like that as well. And I think that's wonderful that you've dedicated your time to it, because there's not a lot of time to be had as a business owner. And you are allocating a lot of your time and talent into a lot of different areas, one of which is you wrote a book recently, which is amazing. And we're going to share with our audience where they can find that on Amazon. But I really want to talk about that now for the rest of the show and talk about, from a high level overview, your book, Choose Your Battles. I know this is a loaded question because there's a lot to it, but what was the inspiration, not so much just for the book, but for you to put pen to paper, so to speak, and really put that message out there? Because, being a business owner alone is courageous because you're putting yourself on the line to make sure that you can make it work. But sharing your story, especially your personal story, is very courageous and takes bravery to not only have the courage to share that personal journey, but to also take the time to make it worth reading, right? I mean, it is funny and it's inspiring. And so how did you really come to think, this is something that I can do and I want to do it and I want to share?
So I started out an Army brat because my father was drafted. He actually was a POW interrogator, spoke a lot of languages, and that included Russian. I was an Army soldier. I was an Army officer. I was an Army spouse, and I'm an Army mom. My son is a Green Beret. I'm very,
wow.
And so I know that I'm a little unique in that I've done all those different Army things and I bleed green. But really, so I kind of wrote it for all those people that I'm talking about, kids. I have grandchildren. I really wanted to memorialize things that happened in the 80s and 90s that are forgotten by many. But had they not happened, we would not be where we are today, particularly advancements that women are still seeing. Most, if not all, of the combat MOSs were not even open to women until 2013. That really isn't that long ago.
No.
Sorry, I'll correct myself, most of them. So I first wrote it for me and for them to memorialize my stories. As I was writing it, I came to realize that it is really cathartic to put in writing your stories. And this is why so many veterans are encouraged to journal. But I never journal because I thought, this is kind of uncomfortable to remember this, because even though this really funny thing happened, this really sad or degrading or insulting thing happened over here. And I have to kind of wrap my arms around all of that. And then I realized as well that, if I put a funny spin on all of it, it is so helpful for me. It helped my actual outlook over my whole career. My book is not a grunge match. It is not a, woe is me, this was so hard. It's actually, this stuff was really funny at times. And that's what I'm going to focus on. If people want to read between some of the lines, they can, and they probably will if they've been through a lot of this stuff. My readers, interestingly enough, are not necessarily veterans. There are all kinds of folks that are saying, I was actually the only woman in this engineering company. And I remember those little microaggressions or whatever the word du jour is, and thank you for putting this out there, because now I feel like I'm I'm actually represented by this book. And
Yep.
I'm not trying to overinflate its importance. In my mind, though, I have seen very little out of women veterans in terms of books. And that's the feedback I've been getting all along. There are some great books out there. Some of them are history books by women about other women that have served in combat. Others are, memoirs of a first woman to fly in combat. And mine's, I think, a little different. It's just, hey, these are kind of the terms and conditions we served under. And these are kind of some of the things that happened. And I think it reads just kind of quickly. But the best part about it is the little lessons learned. They can apply anywhere in life.
People gravitate towards those that they see themselves in. And I think a lot of where we can go with our own journey is by learning from experiences that others have traversed and being able to take that and implement some of the lessons learned into our own lives. I tell people all the time that their best resource in learning how to grow in GovCon is by talking to people who've gone before them, that have already traversed that path and have made some mistakes, and ask them what their experience was. So, it doesn't make you better off making the same mistake twice, even if the first time it wasn't yours that was made, right? And so I think there's so much in the humor aspect of it. You said was cathartic for you, but for others, it's relatable, and it allows people to even take the hardest of times and not let it swallow them up, because that can happen, and life is hard and it's messy, and it can cause a lot of grief and strife, but it isn't all bad. And even the bad times, you can see a little glimmer of hope if you can add some humor to it. And that's what I love about your perspective on things. I think it really humanizes it, and it makes it, for those young girls that are looking toward, is military service something that's for me, they might be inspired to take that leap because of what you've put out there. And so I commend you on sharing your story, because like I said, it's brave, and it is, opening a window into your personal life. And I think you're going to do a lot of good with that. And so we're totally appreciative of that aspect of it as well, because it definitely takes you through your eyes, what you dealt with, and women or men as well, right? Where it's a human experience. It's not just based off of you being a woman in the military, not by any means. Anyone can relate to it. And so I think you've done a wonderful job. I think your anecdotes are amazing. When we chatted through having this discussion originally, we talked about your chapter that you titled Landings. And there were some very humorous things that you put in that section. Would you mind sharing maybe an anecdote or two from that section of the book?
Sure. The backdrop is actually when I first enlisted, I was sent right after boot camp, Army Infantry Airborne School in 1983. And I didn't realize it then. It took me a minute, but I was the only junior enlisted. I was basically the only private female in the entire formation, which begins with about 600. I've heard the figure 700, but this was at the time, and ends with more like 450 graduates. So I stuck out. So there's a lot of funny stories about that. Even my number stuck out on my helmet. It was very different from all the other numbers. And so that number would get called out to do special PT, like extra push-ups and things, all of which was very amusing at the time. In landings, I first refer to a rough landing. I had a platoon sergeant that once said, "You're like a cat, ma'am. Throw you up in the air and you always land on your feet." And I didn't think too much of it at that time, because I was going through kind of a rough time. That's why he said that. But I had, on a particular jump, looked down, admired the trees, and I love nature, and it was a lovely day, and the clouds, and I lost my focus, which is probably the whole lesson. But I was looking in the wrong place, which is between my legs. And when you do that, the ground comes up a lot faster than you think it might. And I basically splattered and was yelled at for not getting up. And I remember that sergeant saying, "Get up." And I said, "I can't." And for me, that was a time when I thought, I'm not used to saying I can't. That's not in my lexicon. So I was very saddened by that whole experience. I paid for it. I was on crutches. I still have a bad foot. But then you get up, right? And then good things start to happen. You dust yourself off. So I talked a little bit about landing, a kind of a crazy thing with a combat landing. I was not a combat officer, so I found it to be a new, you're just diving down into Baghdad and all the lights go off. These people are looking out the window that are holding guns, and you're like, ah! But it was exciting. And then I kind of wrapped that chapter up talking about transitions and how, I think I wasn't the only one. I know so many soldiers and officers that feel a little bit lost as they're going through and as they make the transition. And it's hard. And I describe it as being thrown off a speeding train. So the most important thing I tell to these folks and transitioning folks is to involve yourself as soon as you can, even before you transition, in volunteer activities that hold some meaning for you. Mm-hmm. It's a way to stay connected to the community while you're sorting out your goals and figuring out your next steps.
I love that so much. I mean, I think your anecdote about falling out of the sky and hitting splat on the ground, I think so many people can relate to, whether they've jumped out of a plane or not, right? And it's really not that you fell; it's what you did afterwards to dust yourself off and get up. I mean, I'm really into personal development and growth, and one of my favorite inspirations is Les Brown always said that it's okay if you fall, but if you fall down, make sure you land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. And, it's like, well, that's a good perspective, right? At least I'm not a turtle and I'm, rolling around on my shell. But if you can see up, you can get up and dust yourself off and keep rolling. And I think that's a really clear and straightforward message that your book provides, that it's not always about how pretty the actual situation is. It's what you do with that lesson that was learned. And I think that so many people can relate to it. And you're so inspirational in the way that you delivered that message. Like you said, you don't have to be in the military to understand what it feels like to hit splat on the ground, and not being one of the people who, doesn't get up afterwards. But sometimes it's hard. And there are injuries to our ego and us physically that keep us from moving as quickly as we would like to normally, but you still make your way and you do the best you can to get up and to dust off and keep going. And that's a wonderful message. And I think this book is going to really inspire people. And I encourage people that if they ever have the opportunity to meet you in person, that they'll be able to see you. I think maybe it was Shakespeare that said, though she be tiny, she is fierce. Don't let Irene's small stature fool you. She is full of life and strong as hell. And you're definitely a badass in my book, lady. So I super appreciate you sharing your journey and your message with us. And I hope that we'll be able to have you back again sometime soon, so we can dive more into, your knowledge in GovCon and how you can use that experience to help some veteran business owners that are just starting to engage in it, to use what your experience has been through government and contracting and military experience, and how that translates into having a successful business. And we'll bring you back to talk a little bit more about Spahr Solutions Group at some point as well. But I certainly appreciate your time so very much, Irene. Thank you for being here.
It's been an honor and a privilege, Teresa. And I look so forward to seeing you at the next major conference. I go to all the ones that support our communities in the small business world. And again, thank you. This has been a real honor and a privilege, and a lot of fun too.
Awesome. Well, likewise, it's been a true joy to get to know you. I'm so looking forward to growing my relationship with you as well. It's always impactful to me when I get to meet people who truly embody the spirit of doing good by others, both in your actions and in your words. And your spirit of goodness absolutely radiates I'm so proud to have had you on this program. So thank you again. And as always, here on Spilling the Tea, we pride ourselves on sharing the most insightful and exciting people and information to help you better navigate your GovCon journey. If you like what you heard today, you can see all of our past podcasts, which are archived on our YouTube channel by the same name. Stay tuned for all of our future guests in the coming months as we help you grow to great heights in the year ahead. I'm Teresa Moon, and this is Spilling the Tea on GovCon. Have a great day, my friends.